What's up? Today we're making a spacey moonlit landscape scene. Alright, let's get it. So what you want to do is start with a wet page, put some relatively wet black down, and then we're going to build up our sort of gas clouds in the sky. And you can use any color for this. I'm using this green and this blue. I even tried this greener green, but you'll see that I didn't like it in the end, so I took it out. But what we're doing here is just putting little bits of paint on, and then taking a brush that's just a bit wet and brushing it all in the same direction, so we get these lovely streaks like that. You see that? And you wait for it to dry, and you can build it up some more. Now, to put your stars in, you want to take a brush with relatively hard bristles and a white that's a little bit watered down, not too much, and just dip the brush in the paint and use your fingers to rack the brush and spray it on there. Don't be afraid to test any effects on a separate page, and with this step just be careful to not go too far. You can start having too much fun and put too much white on the page. Then I went over in just a few spots here and there with a small brush just to put some really bright stars in. You don't have to do that. I like doing that. There you can see me working on this little planet. You can use any color, but for this planet I used the yellow ochre for the highlights, and then just a little rim of brown along the right side there for the shadow. And as you can see, I struggled a little with this moon, but one thing to remember when you're painting is if you're struggling, just keep going. It's especially with acrylic paints as I'm using here. You can always fix things. So I ended up making this sort of this haze with this moon. I just put watered down white paint on and then blended it outwards, as you can see there, just a little blended outwards. And then you can, if you go too far, you can always take a wet brush, wet up the paint, and then take a clean brush and pick some paint up. So you can always erase where you're going. And then after I got that nice light effect from the moon, I used a white mixed with just a touch of lemon yellow for the moon itself, and you can see me putting it in there, working it backwards and forwards. I was struggling with this a lot. Even at one point I put the page got too wet and the page started coming up a bit. Just there, you see that. But again, you have to work with your materials. You can always just quit and say I'm not doing this, or you can try and use the mistake to your advantage. With that page coming up, it kind of looks like a crater, so that's what it'll be. And as you can see, I took a little piece of Play-Doh to help me with the shape, because I was really struggling with the shape for some reason. And it doesn't have to be perfectly round, and mine wasn't perfectly round in the end anyway, but decently round. And that's part of what I'm trying to show here. You don't need crazy skills to make a good painting and enjoy yourself. You just need some basic skills, some basic understanding, and a willingness to adapt. And as you can see, I'm going back and forth between the moon and the planet, just waiting for layers to dry when I'm happy with them before moving on to more details. And with this planet, I put this little belt in, and eventually realized that it was a little too low for my liking. So, the shape of the planet is going to be a little bit messed up, but I'm just going to add a little bit more planet at the bottom of that. And it's not completely round, but no one will notice. It's our little secret. I also put just a touch of lemon yellow here and there on the light side of that planet to give it a bit more depth and richness of color. For my moon, I used a watered down brown just to suggest a crater here and there. And if you go too far, don't panic. Just use a wet brush to wet the paint a little bit, a dry brush to pick up the paint that you're working on, and try again. I also came back in with a black pen just to accentuate the outline of that moon a little, to give it a little bit of a stylized feel. You can do that, you don't have to. It's all a matter of taste. So this is where the magic starts happening. We're going to work on the foreground now, always working from the backmost layer forward. We're going to put this hill, the underpainting of this hill in, and the light is coming from our moon in this scene, so we're going to put lemon yellow kind of at the side of the moon, and we're going to use blue where there would be shadow further from the moon. I mixed a little bit of white and lemon yellow just for the edge closest to the moon, and lightly mix that. Don't mix it too much. Then you wait for it to dry. This is very important. You need to wait for it to dry. And that shouldn't take more than about 5 or 10 minutes to dry, depending on how much paint you've used there. And if you have any questions or suggestions or requests, put it in the comments and I'll definitely respond to that. But once that layer's dry, we'll take some brown paint and put it here and there over the blue, and take some yellow ochre and put it here or there over the lemon yellow. You don't want to go too far with this, so I like to use quite a dry paint. So I'll put some paint on the brush and then brush it off somewhere on a piece of paper that I have on the side or something until it's not a complete streak when you put it down, and that gives us that nice rich texture. Now we're going to put in a little telescope, and we start by plotting in the basic shape of the telescope in a little bit of white paint there. And again, if you make a mistake, don't stress. Just use a wet brush to pick up a little paint and try again. You can use it as an eraser, or you can take all the paint off and start again if you feel you need to. And once you're happy with the basic shape, you can come back in with a little bit of black on the side that's closest to us on the telescope for the eye hole. And then to give the whole thing some shape, I used just a touch of some light blue, so some blue mixed with a bit of white, and I put it on the side of the telescope and on each leg that is furthest from the moon. Remember, when we're trying to make a coherent painting, we're always thinking about the direction that the light's coming from, and in this case it's quite easy because the light's coming from the moon, which is in the shot. Now for one of my favorite parts of any element, the shadow. It's my favorite part because it's so easy and it looks so good. So you take a mixture of brown and blue to give this nice dark shade, and you put some on your brush and wipe that brush off until, again, there's just a little bit left on your brush. Then you just lightly brush that on in the opposite direction of the light to give that shadow. It looks hard, it's really not. Then we just do more of the same. We're putting in another hill using a lemon yellow and blue underpainting. Lemon yellow where the light is coming from, little blue in the darkness, and a little mix of them to make this nice green in the middle. And you blend that a little bit, again, not too much. It's these accidental details that really bring a painting to life, really sell it. I then come back in with some white just on the edge that's closest to the moon, again just to suggest that light direction. And once again, we wait for this to dry completely, about 5 or 10 minutes depending on how much paint you used. Then we come back in with some browns in the blue bits, some yellow ochre in the light bits. I don't know why I keep forgetting the name of yellow ochre, but there we go. And then you can also mix a little brown and yellow ochre together for the mid points. Just working it a little bit here and there, using quite a dry paint, being careful not to go too far. Just leave a little bit of that blue and that lemon yellow poking through, and again it just gives this lovely rich texture and color. And I noticed the hills were kind of blending it together a little in the bottom right corner, so I'm taking some yellow ochre, straight plain yellow ochre, and just defining our front hill again. If you ever find that your layers are blending in too much, it's normally because you need a greater difference in tones, so light versus dark, or a difference in temperature of color to make that really pop. Now it's time to put our tree in, and this does take a little bit of skill with the brush, but not too much. As you can see there, you can always use a wet brush to clean up your lines, and trees are quite forgiving. They as long as they're generally skinnier on top and a little fatter on the bottom, they look right. So yeah, I'm putting in the basic shape of my tree using a baby blue, again just a blue mixed with some white. And then I'm coming in again on the side that's closest to the moon, all the sides of the branches and the stem that's closest to the moon, and putting a little bit of white because that's where the light's coming from. Again, that's always how we build objects. And then we'll come in with some darker blue for the side that's furthest from the moon. I started using brown there, but then I realized that was probably wrong. And when I say darker blue, I don't mean extremely dark, because it still needs to show up against the quite dark sky that we have there. So yeah, there we go. I finally found it. Using a darker blue than what's on the tree, but not so dark that it gets lost in that black background there. And look at that, a wonderful tree. And I doubt anybody's made it this far into this scuffed video, but if you have, thank you, you're a legend. And leave me your favorite fun fact in the comment, just to let me know that you're still here. So when we're happy with our tree, when we're done with the little detailing, we're going to put in a shadow again. The same exact method. We're going to use a brown mixed with the blue to give us a nice dark tone that's not completely black. Put it on the brush, wipe the brush off until it's almost gone, and then brush away from the moon. Then we're going to do a similar thing that we've been doing for our next and final hill, using lemon yellow for the highlights, the top of the hill that's closest to the moon, a little bit of blue in the bottom, mix that together on the page to get this green, and again, don't overmix. You want those little details in. A little bit of white just on the edge of that hill, again, just to show just an extra little suggestion of where the light's coming from. Now for this next part, I've taken a fan brush, and I'm taking some white mixed with a tiny bit of yellow. And I'm just breaking up that hill at the top there, and making the breaking up the hill at the bottom too, but making sure that the strokes at the bottom are a little bit bigger, just show the grass is closer at the bottom of the hill as it's closer to us. Then when that's all dry, we'll move on. We're going to take the same colors that we've been using and build up this grassy field in the front. Again, we can't really see the grass in the other hills because it's a bit too far away, but now that we're working on the closest hill, we should be able to see some indication of grass. So we're taking yellow ochre, brown, even a touch of lemon yellow here and there, even a little bit of blue just in the bottom left corner, and we're building this up slowly. This is where you really need to take your time. And test your strokes on another piece of paper. Test that the viscosity of the paint is thin enough to make these nice grass-like strokes, but not so thin that it just runs everywhere. And just keeping in mind that it should be more or less lighter at the top of the hill and more or less darker at the bottom. And that's how you know, if you need to put a little bit more brown, a little bit more lemon yellow, although you probably won't need much lemon yellow for this step, but a little bit more yellow ochre, even yellow ochre mixed with a bit of white, just for the very edge of that hill. And you were just stroking in the same direction, making these gentle little upstrokes, building it up slowly. This part probably took me half an hour. And what you want to keep in mind here is just how dark or light the piece that you're working on should be, based on how close it is to the moon. And you don't want to overdo it. You can. It's so easy to get carried away and just lather the paint on, but just take your time, just little bits here and there. And finally, I'm going to put in one more object just to have another shadow to show the directionality of that light again. You don't have to do this, you can stop here if you just like an empty grass field, but I quite like a little wooden sign. So yeah, just working on the basic shape of this sign now, and the black does show up just because we have that green nebula in the background from all that time ago. And it took me a little while to get a shape I was happy with, but again, you don't need to stress about being perfect on the first try. You can take as long as you need to, you can erase it as many times as you need to with a bit of water, come back in and get it right the next time. And just like every other object, once we got that basic shape in, I'll come back in with the highlights, putting a little bit of white on the side of the post and on the top of the post that's closest to the moon. And then finally we'll use the same method for our shadow, where we use a bit of blue and a bit of brown mix for this nice dark color. Put a little bit on your paintbrush and wipe the paintbrush off until there's just a bit. You don't want it too dark, and then brush in the opposite direction of that moon to give that nice long shadow. And there we go, we're all done.